facing you. All right. Gnostic Informant, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, my name's Neil. I have a channel called Gnostic Informant. It is a channel that I started a little less than 2 years ago. It was maybe about a year and a half ago. After I left the church, I was a Christian. I was kind of a conservative, fundamentalist Christian for a while. And I started to lose my faith, started studying my way out of that. And, I was found channels like Derek's Myth Vision channel really inspired me to do my own kind of thing with that. And so I started making this channel. My first video was about why I left the church. And then I started bringing on a lot of academics and scholars and asking them about religion, Christianity, comparative mythology stuff. Became a mythicist for a while, and was convinced by Richard Carrier. Went down that rabbit hole for a little bit. Then realized I was kind of in the fringes because started talking to academics about why they're not mythicists, and all these arguments started making sense. And I'm like, okay, I moved away from that. And and now I just make videos on ancient religions, ancient Greece, ancient mythology, stuff like that. So it's stuff I'm into.
Cool. So, Modern Day Debate actually offered me to debate Carrier on Jesus' existence, and I was posted it on like Twitter for people to give me advice on like where I can find the methodology of history. And Captain Dadpool sent me your video, the one where you debunk Carrier on the for like 3 hours or whatever, really long
Oh
video.
yeah.
It was a great video, by the way. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind. So, could you tell me backstory, what led up to it, what was your inspiration, that kind of stuff, and what was the most critical points that you found were?
Yeah. So I started up that video with the video. The reason why I started that video was I noticed that Richard Carrier and this is actually, people might think this is a dumb reason, but this is just the honest truth of it. I was watching a video that Carrier and Godless Engineer did, and it was supposedly like dunking on this other academic named David Litwa, who's a decent academic in my opinion. He's a good friend of mine too. And they were it was like they were putting a microscope on every word he said. If he like said something half wrong, and he's in a live stream setting in a very like laid back setting. It's not like a peer reviewed debate or anything. Like this is not like, so he's just hanging out with somebody on a live stream for a couple hours. So of course you're going to say things that are going to be like, oh, check the book on that. Check the book on it. So they did like a 4-hour video supposedly dunking on this guy. And it was like, to my personal opinion, it was embarrassing. It looked like people who are mad because, backstory, David Litwa has written some things about Carrier and is very critical about Carrier's scholarship. And so Carrier obviously doesn't like him. And Godless Engineer, anyone who Carrier doesn't like, Godless Engineer doesn't like. It's just, that's just the way it is. So they did this video, and I just was watching it, and I was like, do they actually think this is convincing? And I just remember being like, all right, I want to do a video showing like some of the dumb shit they say, because if they think this is like the deadliest sin ever, of like some of the stuff that David Little was saying, like, which wasn't even that big of a deal, they think that's bad. Why don't we put a light on what they're saying? Some of the Godless Engineer in one of his videos said that Philo of Alexandria believed in an angel named Jesus before Christianity. And spoiler alert, that's not true. It's nowhere to be found. We have books of Philo that are preserved till today. He doesn't say shit about an angel named Jesus. He talks about a logos. Okay, we can go there. We can talk about that. There's a lot of similarities. Obviously, Christians are drawing from Philo. Everyone knows that. It's not like some only mythicists know that. No. Everyone knows that. Everyone agrees on that. But there's no Jesus in there. And so him and Carrier try to argue that there is. If you look at this one verse in Zechariah that Philo quotes in this one passage in this one paragraph here, and they go on to this huge tirade about that. So I made a video about it, and I focus mainly on that thing because that's like the big mythicist argument. The big mythicist argument is not that Jesus didn't exist. It's that there was an angelic Jesus that predates Christianity. Most people don't realize that. Most people are like, why are you what is your battle against mythicists? There's hardly any evidence that Jesus existed. I'm like, no, I don't disagree with that. The fact is that's not what mythicism is. Mythicism is that there was an angel named Jesus before Christianity, which is false. It's completely fringe. So that was my video.
Awesome. There are some comments that says your audio on your stream is muted. I don't think they can hear you on your stream.
Yeah, I saw that. I'll see if I can fix it real quick. But yeah, keep
All right. So yeah. So I don't really understand the methodology historians use to establish whether or not somebody exists or doesn't exist. This is the part that I find the hardest to try to address when talking to mythicists, because their criticisms seem relatively valid to people. Like, yeah, of course, most historians could have, or most people in history could have been made up by the people around them. I think you even mentioned this in the video. Yeah, the evidence for Jesus is pretty terrible. And so it seems rational what they're saying. And so I think to help people understand why most historians reject this, you have to really understand what the criterion they're using to establish that someone does exist or doesn't exist, and why the mythicism is going further than what is required by adding these extra criterion to try to really make the burden of proof for convincing that a person exists historically significantly higher than it should be. And that's the part that I'm trying to grasp before I'd like to get into a debate with Carrier.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you are going to debate Carrier on mythicism, it the thing that he just doesn't have an answer for because there's no evidence of is this pre-existing, and he says this in his video. Like, okay, I did a video. Let's just go down the lore a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just slow down a little bit. So after that video came out, Carrier wrote a blog, and obviously he was very unhappy with the video and had some things to say. Well, Derek's kind of a peacemaker, Derek Lambert of Myth Vision, and he suggested that me and Carrier should get together and do a live and talk it over, and let's duke this out and be fair and honest, and let's see who's right about what, but let's be polite and get to the bottom of some of this stuff. I'm like, all right, deal. So we went live, and he's calling me. He's saying that I'm insane. Like, he's like really like the gaslighting was through the roof, and I knew it the whole time, but I just kind of let it happen with whatever. I'm not gonna like let him get under my skin while I'm live. Like, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Anyways, he made this point where he said that I misquoted his ideas on Philo. He's like, I didn't say any of that stuff. I made it clear that Philo doesn't actually mention this angel, but we can pull from Philo and find that he might have thought this. Okay, that sounds way different. Let me go back to the videos, because he goes in front of these atheist conventions, but he used to until he got kicked out. He used to go in front of these atheist conventions and speak as if he's like an authority on this stuff, and he would just spew nonsense in front of it. I think he knew that his audience was like this. It's the same dynamic of like a pastor in front of a church. Like, most of these atheists just want to hear that Jesus doesn't exist. No offense to atheists, but like a lot of them just want to hear that stuff. So he knows he has that over his audience. So he's just completely abusing the sources, the text, the data, and just going on. And so I go back to these videos. I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did say it better. I could be wrong. Let's look back. And it turns out not only in that video that we were discussing did he actually say exactly what I thought he said, he did that in 7 other videos, including an 8th video that I found where he says that it is scholarly consensus, an undeniable fact. I'm quoting him verbatim. He said it's an undeniable fact that there was a Christian cult before Christianity that worshiped a Jesus angel. He tells us in front of millions of people. Well, that video got like 1 million views, maybe 500,000 views somewhere. Let's just say a lot of views in front of this convention. So I pull these clips out and I make a little collage for Facebook. I didn't even put it on YouTube. Made a short video for Facebook, put that up there. Then he said that I took him out of context there. So then obviously his boyfriend, Godless Engineer, had to make a video and try to splice it up in a way where it try to make me look like I was like just barely cutting out certain things. But the stuff that he showed that I was cutting out was like, Philo grew up in Israel, it was like outside information that had nothing to do with what Carrier was trying to say that I was taking out of context. And I was just like, I can't believe that this is mind blowing that people actually are, that they think this is commit. So, anyways, I made a second video responding to that. But back to your question, the big thing that Carrier, and this is the reason why people don't take Carrier seriously. It's not that he's questioning the sources on how Jesus is. There's no sources that he didn't write anything down. It's not that there's no contemporary people that are like, hey, I live next to Jesus. We don't have any physical evidence of Jesus. That's not what people are criticizing Carrier for. It's the fact that he's pushing this narrative that there's a pre-existing Jesus tradition that predates Christianity. That's nonsense. If anyone's going to debate him, you just go focus right on that because he has no answer for that. There's no evidence for it. He'll point to a text that's in the late 90s, Ascension of Isaiah. And then you'll say, but wait a minute, you're the one saying we can't use the Gospels as evidence because they're so late. Why are we using the Ascension of Isaiah? Some people say it's in the 2nd century. Some people, a lot of scholars think essentially that's 2nd century text. Why are we using? You're just going to cherry pick the sources that you think are good and then deny the ones that you think are bad and call them late. That's a double standard right there. You can't do that. So that's one of the things that I would be mainly focused on if I was going to debate. Like, Carrie, where's your angelic Jesus at? It doesn't exist. Just admit that. And he kind of did admit that. And he had, like I said, he kind of did admit that when we went live. He said, "Oh yeah, if I said it that way," I actually have a clip of him saying, "If I did say it that way, that is misleading. You're right." I was like, okay. And then he definitely regrets saying that now.
So did he make a response article to your video showing
Of
his?
course.
What did he say? What were his
I'm
arguments?
the PhD expert. He's not. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm an expert. I have a PhD. I have an expert. And mic drop. He puts mic drop at the end of his own article. Like, who does that? Who puts mic drop at the end of their own blogs? And it was just kind of like, I think one of the things that he might be, let's be honest here, one of the things that he might have that I might have been wrong about was the Nazareth thing. There is a couple of academics that think that Pliny the Elder's Tetrarch of the Nazarini is referring to Nazareth, but that's not a consensus thing. I kind of said it like it was. So he got me on that part. I admit that. The rest of the video, I don't think he has any answer for it at all. That's, you know what I mean? So, and that's another thing. It's like the Nazareth thing has nothing to do with his theory anyway. That was like a 0.1% of my video, like compared to like the grand scheme of me like really focusing on, dude, your theory is about an angel named Jesus that existed before Christianity, which is not a thing at all. Nobody thinks that. Not one person, except for your predecessor, Earl Doherty, who's not an expert. He's just a guy who wrote a book.
So you said one of the main arguments he has is that there is this pre-existing tradition of Jesus. Is that the crux of his position? Is that the main justification for why he believes Jesus didn't exist?
Yeah. Yeah, because if you know the history of mythicism, the history of mythicism is that people started to do the whole comparative mythology thing, like the zeitgeist thing. That's been going on for hundreds of years. Thomas Paine thought that Jesus was the sun, was just a personification of the sun. There was mythicists in Germany. There's mythicists in England in the 1900s, 1800s. And scholarship has gone around full circle to say that all is kind of it's outdated now. Like there's reasons why. It's not that there's nothing to it. It's that when we look at look at historicity, it's not about if he's mythologized or not. Obviously, Jesus is mythologized and legendized. That's not what anyone's debate. It's about like there's certain things that indicate that there probably was a guy who got crucified. And so there, at this point in time, the data suggests that there probably was something that happened. That's it. And so to come along and say that, oh, we have evidence of a pre-existing tradition in Judaism, where where they worshipped a logos named Jesus, you have to show evidence for that. You can't just say that. You have to. That's really fringe. There's a reason why people don't take him seriously. That's like aliens type shit. That's like the aliens met the president type shit. It's nonsense. It really is. There's no evidence at all for it.
So you had this like graph of all the different people that he has these tropes or whatever that Jesus qualifies as these tropes, and he says that one of the reasons he thinks Jesus is a myth because it fits these like archetypes of stories or whatever, and then you show that there's a list of a whole bunch of historical figures that also qualify on the vast majority of those criterions that he had.
Yeah. The point about that is that people in the ancient world, when there's stories written about them, they always are legendary. There's hardly any like in ancient history. There's hardly any stories written about any character that don't come with like a legend or some sort of mythology behind it. Like even Pythagoras and Democritus and all these like scientific thinkers of the ancient Greek world, even they're performing miracles and doing wild stuff, and their stories are told in ways that aren't true. We know they're not true, but we know those people existed. And like Caesar Augustus was born from a Apollo is impregnated his mother, and there was a star in the sky signifying the king would be born, and all the same tropes that you hear with any other legendary figure you see with Augustus. Alexander the Great, his mother was born from the god Serapis, who came in impregnated her, and he was the son of God, and he went to the oracle of Ammon, and the oracle of Ammon said, "You today I've begotten you." And he goes, and it's the same. It's all the same. Like the way that these myths are written are no different, and these are real people. Like there's no. It's so to point that out is like, yeah, we know that. We know. And I'll even grant Jesus is probably higher on that list because of what these gospels are trying to do. The gospels are a different type of story as far as like writing about somebody. It's not like a biography. This is a mythological. This is the gospels are drawing from the Old Testament, taking tropes from Joseph and Isaac and Abraham and applying them to Jesus. And then also taking tropes from other places like Homer and Hesiod or whatever, applying them to Jesus. So with Jesus, of course, you're going to get the highest rank Raglan scale. Of course you are. It's not surprising to anybody. They're applying mythology to Jesus like at a very high level, of course.
I got a question from Mojo. He asks, can you ask Neil if people want to be mythicists to deal with their reason to leave Christianity?
I think so. I did the same thing. When I left Christianity, I don't say that in like a demeaning way. Like I get it. Like when I left Christianity and I started looking for who the real historical Jesus was, it's hard to find. We know almost nothing about him. There's hardly any evidence. So I understand why people are mythicists. I get it.
So what was it for you that changed you from being a mythicist to accepting Jesus existed?
Well, because first of all, I'm not an expert in like testing historicity and so I went to people who are experts in that. And I just think it made a lot of sense that like there are certain details. For example, like why is he born in Nazareth? Why is he killed under Pilate? Why is he like what's up with these random kind of attributes that it just doesn't seem likely that this is being made. And some of the stuff he said, this is why I think there was people talk about the Q document. A lot of people roll their eyes when they hear that. Like, there's no evidence for it. Well, there's no evidence for a lot of texts that we know exist. But the reason why I think there's something there is that the three synoptic gospels have a lot of source material in common, and a lot of that stuff are the sayings of Jesus. Not like the stuff that happened, not like the narratives, but a lot of the stuff that they have in common are sayings. And a lot of those sayings are like very, very local in a sense that's like Jesus is like talking about like the laws of like like he's like saying, oh, like this is what should we do on the Sabbath? Like these are like local weird laws that maybe that it's possible that they made this up. It's very possible, but the people I talk to who have been studying this for 20, 30 years say this certain material looks like it came from a guy. So until we can prove that it's not Jesus, we're going to go with the most likely scenario is there probably was a guy who said some of these things, and he probably did get crucified. To me, that makes sense. I'm not just buying it just out of just because. Like, I think that actually does make sense. I legitimately do think it makes sense.
What makes sense?
That there are certain things about the way he's portrayed in the synoptics. So the synoptics are the first three, and the source material that they gather are in common suggests that there probably was somebody who got crucified who said certain things, and these certain things got recorded and then made their ways into these gospels later on. It just makes sense for me. It does. I'm not saying that that's like, I think there's undeniable evidence for that. What I'm saying is, and what I'm hearing from the experts is that it's more likely that that's probably the case. It's not like it's 100% chance he existed. It's probably like 65-35, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
not high. It's not high. It's just more likely than not, in my opinion. And then so you couple that with, and so let me just pause it right there for a second. When I say that, a lot of times I'll get in the comments, but so then why are you even opposing mythicists then if you don't think it's that strong of a case? And I'm not opposing if he existed or not. I'm opposing the idea that there was a tradition that predates Christianity of another Jesus. That's what I'm opposing. Like, if someone came along and was like, yeah, I just don't think he existed at all, I think they just wrote these stories and that was it, I don't even blame you for thinking that. Like, that might be the case. It's possible. Like I said, I don't think it's the likelihood of the case. But to go another step and say we found evidence of a tradition of people that worship Jesus before Jesus was even alive or before he was crucified or whatever, then it's like, okay, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Like, seriously. And this is why I said it's about Godless Engineer. He has a shirt on that he sells on his channel that says "God Evidence." I'm asking him, you're wearing a shirt that says "God Evidence." Where's the evidence then?
Have you gotten a chance to ask either Carrier or Godless Engineer about this, and what was their response?
Well, so I asked Godless Engineer about this when we were still friends, and he just pointed to the text in Philo that Carrier has in the book, and I go, okay, where's Jesus in there? And he's like, oh, he's quoting from Zechariah. And okay, all right. There's a guy named Jesus in that verse in Zechariah. I'm like, oh, okay, I get what you guys are doing now. So then that's when I started looking for what.
Wait, go back to, you said you get what you guys are doing now. What do you mean?
So Philo has in his writings. Let me see if I have Philo right somewhere over here. Maybe not. I just want to show you how thick Philo. Oh, here, it's right here. We have so much Philo that has been passed, that's been preserved. There's so much that we have from him that we can definitively say, like, we know a lot about Philo. It's not like we just have a few fragments laying around that we barely know what he believed and what he thought. We have volumes and volumes and volumes and books and books and books that Philo wrote today. So we know what Philo thought. We know what his beliefs were. He never mentions an angel named Jesus once. Never. Not one time. But he does talk about a logos. And this idea that the logos, and he's getting this from the Greeks. So Philo's a Jew living in Alexandria. He's speaking Greek. He's writing in Greek. And he's familiar with Plato. He's familiar with the pre-Socratics. And they have this idea of a logos, the divine mind. Sometimes it's the mind of Zeus. Sometimes it's Hermes, the messenger. Anyways, he's taken this idea of the logos and he's applying it through the lens of Judaism and saying that God, he has a messenger who's the logos. So in the case of the Old Testament, whenever an angel shows up and speaks to a prophet, that's the logos. And he does this in Zechariah. He's talking about this in Zechariah. The angel that comes and speaks to the star in the east, who's known as Zerubbabel, who's 14th from the line of David. You can look this up in the genealogies. And so this was like a big deal. He was the guy who rebuilt the temple after they came back from Persia. Okay, so Philo is writing about this, and he's quoting from Zechariah, and he's citing Zechariah for this star in the east, and he's mentioning how this ethereal logos would be there to speak with them, and that's this angel in Zechariah. Well, what they're doing, what Carrier and what Carrier's, I'll just say what Carrier's doing is he's trying to say that this angel in Zechariah is this high priest named Jesus or Joshua, which is not. It's not. But he just wants to, because it's so close that you could, Philo in one of his small passages in his voluminous books just happens to cite this passage. And in this passage, there's a high priest named Joshua. So he's taking that and saying, look, this is what Philo believed in. And it's completely speculation. It's like nobody agrees with this. There's not like any other academics that are like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No one's saying that. And so I pointed that out. I was like, no, this is just bullshit. Like, that's not the case. Like, let's go through this. And I thoroughly went through that in my video. I went through all the evidence. I even tried to steel man for him a little bit. Like, okay, let's say it was Jesus. It still wouldn't work out because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's the high priest, Jeshua, or the governor, Zerubbabel, because the angel who's the messenger is not either of them. He's just the angel of the Lord in the passage. He's not either of those characters. So you have to watch my video to understand what I'm saying there.
And is this the only evidence they have that there is this pre-existing tradition?
Yeah. There's nothing else.
It's
bad.
Really, yeah, that's bad.
Bad. That's why no one takes them seriously. And I'm not being like bitter. Like, I don't even have why would I care? I used to be a mythicist. Like, why would I randomly just turn on them and just, yeah, I'm just telling you what, I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you what I'm told by experts and what they criticize about Carrier's work. And it turns out what they're saying makes a lot of sense. Sorry, you can get mad at me all you want. People got really mad at me about this.
So if we just say that argument's defeated, that there is no pre-existing or no evidence of a pre-existing tradition of worshiping Jesus, there's a lot of other mythicist arguments. Can you tell me some of the other ones? And do you think they're decent arguments?
The thing I would say about that is that we like for Paul, for example, Paul comes earlier than the Gospels, and he doesn't give us a lot of details about Jesus' life. He even admits he never met Jesus. He just met him in a vision or something. So the thing I would say about that is that the evidence is so bad. It's like we have nothing. Jesus wrote nothing down. We don't know his disciples didn't write shit down. We first start hearing about him in the letters of Paul and Clement, and those letters are like really vague. A guy got crucified. That's all you know. Some guy got crucified for our sins. That's it. And then post 70, we're talking a whole generation later, people start writing gospels. And so I don't blame people for being like, dude, it's just, I just don't believe he existed. It's just, I look at that and I say, I just don't see it. I'm sympathetic to that because I get it. I understand that. It makes a lot of, like, you're looking at it and you're honestly just saying, who's this Jesus guy? What did he say? If the gospels are all mythology and he didn't write anything down, then how do we know anything about him? And that's true. We don't know shit. It's that bad. So that's what I would say about, like, if there's any mythicist theories that I would agree. And another thing is the comparative mythology stuff. A lot of scholars, I'm thinking about Ehrman right now, but there's more than just him, who don't want to admit that there's a lot of tropes in the New Testament that are very similar to a lot of tropes in the world of Greek mythology, like Dionysus and Attis and Tammuz, these gods that go down in the underworld and come back up and that die and rise, or Osiris. Osiris was all about resurrection and drinking the wine and eating the bread, and there's a Eucharist and all types of stuff that remind you of Christianity when you start digging into it. So the comparative mythology thing, I get that too. I'm all about that on my channel.
And you mentioned that the thing that seemed to convince you was when the professional historians told you that there were some facts, like the fact that he was born in Nazareth and that he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. To me, these don't seem significantly stronger than the argument that Carrier's making, that there's this one passage in Philo that references this other guy where there happens to be a name of Joshua. Why would we accept that Jesus existed just because of these strange facts that are in the New Testament?
That's a good question, and for me, it's the I look at the hostile sources of Christianity, and like obviously they don't, not of them, all of them are preserved, but we do have some of them through writings that are quoted and cited. We have Celsus, we have some of this material that makes it into the Talmud that the Jews are writing about, and it seems that nobody is disagreeing. There's nobody contesting that he existed. Like if we had some Greek pagan writer in the first, second century that is like, this is all made up. This is just nonsense. These people are crazy. We have no records of this. Then I would be like, well, okay, let's go with this for a second. There's nothing from the Jewish side, nothing from the Greek pagan side. It seems to be that everybody just sort of, yeah, there was a guy. And there's even people that have like Celsus in the 150s is talking about how he's his sources, who are Jews from Israel, told him that Jesus was the son of a Roman soldier named Pantera, and that they knew who his biological father was. This is in the Talmud too. So there's like it gets a little weird because there's like other traditions about him, but none of them are like it didn't exist at all. It's always just like some sort of weird historical story.
Is that common, like in history, when there is a mythical being created? Do you find a lot of people saying, no, that's just made up, it doesn't exist?
Yeah, yeah, and the bet I mythicists will throw up what's his name? What's the guy's name who oh man, I can't think of his name. When a mythological character is historicized, there's a word for it. Someone in the chat's probably going to say it, but that guy, I think he's writing in the 3rd, 4th century BCE, and he was criticized heavily by Diodorus of Sicily, by like Diodorus of Sicily in his writings in the 1st century BCE was talking about this other guy who was writing stories about Zeus on planet Earth and Dionysus on planet Earth as if they lived. And everyone knows these are ancient gods that, like, the etymology of the name Zeus is Sky Father, Jupiter. He didn't exist on Earth. He's the Sky Father. We know that. But this guy was writing about, no, he lived in Crete. We know where his tomb is. And so when he came out with those writings, people criticized it. People challenged him. And we have those writings. Diodorus is one of them. With Jesus, you don't get that. You don't get, wait a minute, you're saying he lived in Nazareth now? We know this is a myth. We don't find anything like that. That's a big difference, in my opinion. Yo, Euhemeris. Thank you, Nick Jr. Euhemeris. There's a guy named Euhemeris. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. I'm like really drawing blanks today. It's been one of those days.
Yeah.
A guy named Euhemeris wrote a bunch of stories about all the Greek gods that lived on Earth. And like he just like historicized them. And you'll see a lot of mythicists will say Jesus is a euhemerization, is one of the if you have to show, like, if you make that claim, you have to show the evidence that he started off as a myth. You can't just say that he's a euhemerization. You got to show that. Where's the myth of Jesus that predates the story of him living in Nazareth? It started off historical. Now the Gospels aren't historical, I get that, but they're based off historical. Like they're placing the story in history, and they're, you know what I mean? So, which is common, by the way, which is how this is how stories were written back then.
And so that's the difference, you say, is that there is prior evidence to Zeus and those people existing in mythology prior to
thousands of years. Like all of a sudden, like you can go back to the Bronze Age and there's a Deus Pater, and that's a Proto-Indo-European version of Zeus. And then so that god Deus Pater, you see him over in India in a different Indra. You could see the etymology of the name changing over time and making its way over to India. You also see another pattern flowing over to Greece into Zeus. So language doesn't lie. We know that linguistics shows that Zeus Pater, the Sky Father, is an ancient god from thousands of years ago. He didn't just show up in Crete and was born in Crete. We know, like, and like I said, people challenged this. People were like, "You're wrong, you Hemorrhus. It's not true." And we have those texts, but with Christianity, you don't see that.
Got a question from Javer Jara. He says, "Ask GI why, if there's one evidence for Mythicism Carrier's book past peer review, and the critics didn't attack the book's arguments, only present their criticisms in not peer review."
First of all, peer review doesn't mean peer review is not like a scientific breakthrough. Anybody can pass peer review with bad opinions all the time. Gary Habermas passed peer review for a resurrection of Jesus. So does that mean the resurrection of Jesus happened? Peer review doesn't mean like there's different types of peer review. In the science world is way different than historical books world, because history is all theories and stuff. So and second of all, I'm not going to get too deep down the rabbit hole here, but he didn't take his book to Oxford or Columbia where he didn't go to the big leagues to get peer reviewed. He went to some random Sheffield press, and a lot of people are criticizing, if you had this game changer, why didn't you go to Oxford to get published? Why? And so a lot of people, this is not me saying this. I'm getting this from a lot of different academics, that he would that book would never pass through Oxford publishing. So remember, there's different levels to peer review. Sometimes you can go to Robert M. Price has a journal where he gives out honorary PhDs to crazy people like Ralph Ellis and peer reviews them. People get peer reviewed, but there's really low level peer review and there's high level peer review. And so the question is, where was this at? I can't really speak too much on that. Like, I don't know too much about it. But even if it was legit, even if it was a legit peer review, it doesn't mean doesn't mean we change everything. It doesn't mean scholarship changes forever. It just means another person came along with another theory, and other people. And by the way, ask yourself this, Javier: what academics are citing Carrier right now? What professors are teaching Carrier in their classrooms? None. So it doesn't matter if he's peer reviewed. It matters who's citing him. Is he being used? Did he change people's minds? The answer is no. That's it.
So I did want to go back and ask about why historians accept Jesus did exist, even though the evidence is so terrible, because you even admit, yeah, the evidence for Jesus is terrible. And I think most historians say it's pretty terrible, but we still grant that the New Testament is some reference to history for some reason. Why do we take it seriously at all?
Well, number one is that the state religion of Western society was Christianity for 1400 years. So I think we sort of have to deal with it now. So I honestly think if that wasn't the case, then it would be one of those like, hey, there's a story over here that somebody wrote in the first century. This is interesting. And then that's it. Like, we have other tales like that, like Apollonius of Tyana. There's a story about Apollonius of Tyana doing all these weird miracles, and people think he existed. And the stories are all nonsense. No one's dealing with it today. Like, it's not in front of everyone's faces. No one really cares about it. But Christianity is, because of how history turned out. And that's why everyone deals with it. That's why people put it in history, and
But is there no like actual historical justification to treat the New Testament documents as a historical thing that we should take seriously? Is there no like written methodology? Because that's what I'd really like to understand, a like methodology, a set of criteria. Like, here's what you use in history to establish someone existed or someone's fictitious in any given instance, and it's not just because culturally it was important or something.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're going back before. You're saying, like, why should we even include it as like? Honestly, I don't think anyone has to. I don't think you have to. I think because the story of Jesus in Nazareth and going down to Jerusalem and getting killed by Pilate is such a small part of history, and it doesn't really, unless you're a Christian that believe that this event is what your salvation for some reason depends on, Unless you're that, then it means nothing. It's just a guy. It's just like any other Judas of Galilee or Simon of Perea. There's a dime a dozen of these guys that were in the first century doing the same thing Jesus was doing and getting martyred and getting killed. We have tons of them. There are tons of miracle workers, Coney the circle drawer, and all these people that were doing all. That's just what the time period was about. So I guess that made me think of something. I guess in that context is like trying to understand what the world of the first century was like. There's a good way that there's a good text to look at because it lets you peer into the culture of the world of the first century. People are walking around following people because they think he's the Messiah. That was a common thing in that time period. It wasn't just Jesus. There's a lot of people that thought there was a Messiah. Simon Bar Kokhba in the 2nd century, they thought he was the Messiah. He led a revolt because he thought he was chosen by God. He got killed. And that was the world back then.
It seems like all the people God chooses tend to get killed quite often.
It's kind of interesting, right?
But I do have another question about. I really liked the lists that you gave of all the different historical figures who meet Carrier's criterion. But I wanted to see if there's another list of something similar where, if we take the mythicist criterion of what they're doing in order to say that Jesus doesn't exist, and whatever set of things they say are this is the ones we use to establish that a character was mythological, is there a list that shows a bunch of other people in history that we could apply the same methodology to and say they didn't exist for the same number of reasons?
So you're talking about people who actually didn't exist, or they did exist?
They did exist, but we can apply the same criterion that like Carrier and Godless Engineer and the Mythicists are using to make them, or to argue they did exist.
Yeah, you can apply that right to like Coney the circle drawer, or you can apply that to Simon of Perea. You can apply that to, like I mentioned, Apollonius and Tiana. Apollonius and Tiana. How do you know? Like you can apply the same method. And to be fair, David Fitzgerald. I don't know if you know if David Fitzgerald. He's consistent with it at least. Like he thinks none of these people existed. Like he'll go down the list and say, I don't think he existed. I don't think he existed, because at least he's following his own criteria. So he doesn't like. He seems to think nobody existed. If they didn't write something down or something, then they didn't exist. That's kind of how where he's at. So, yeah, I guess you can apply that to basically anybody who's not like somebody, for example, like a Roman emperor. A Roman emperor is preceded by another Roman emperor, who's then succeeded by another Roman emperor. His face is usually on coins. So, and there's you can't fake that. You can't just insert that into history. It'd be impossible. But like some random hermit living in the desert, you can insert that easily because history is not dependent on that person to exist. Whereas Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great, you can't fake those people. You have to. They were there, and you had. So that would be like, yeah, you can apply it to basically anybody whose history is not dependent on anybody.
So we got a hater in the audience. So it's this Myth Vision podcast guy. I don't know who this is. Some crazy guy says Neil must be a secret Christian because he thinks some Jewish dude existed. Just admit it, Neil.
Got me. I'm really going to church every day.
We also have another hater who is a genuine hater. David Bennett says you don't know what you're talking about in a previous comment. He's like, name one person who walked around and followed the person Jesus who, and what's your source?
I don't know. I already said that. The evidence is terrible.
Well, wouldn't you consider like the apostles?
But no, this is the thing that David Bennett is making a point that I don't disagree with. Like,
yeah.
if we're just focusing on Jesus and the evidence, I'm not fighting that battle because it's terrible. But if we're focusing on a tradition that predates Christianity, then I want to see what the evidence show. You need to show evidence for that. Like this is a whole different topic. That's what people think mythicism is, the belief that Jesus didn't exist because the evidence is bad. It's not. It's totally different than that. It's a whole different thing, you know? So that's my answer to David. It's like, you're spot on that one. I'm not fighting that battle. There's no evidence.
Well, for this, do you think that there are actual evidence of people following Jesus? Like I think the apostles, Peter, all those guys, they are said to have actually followed Jesus, right? So
yeah,
Why couldn't they be used as sources to answer this question?
Well, because number one, Peter, we don't have any actual thing that Peter wrote. We have like secondary sources, like the tradition. Eusebius says this is that Mark and Peter went to Alexandria, Egypt, and composed the first gospel. It might be true. Like we don't have a reason to disbelieve that. We don't know for sure. We don't have we can't go back and look at the video or something. But like the way Mark is written, it's definitely seems like it was written in some sort of library setting where he has access to a lot of different sources, because Mark is drawing heavily from a lot of different places. So it's probably likely that it was in Alexandria or it was in Syria, where there was a big library in Syria at the time. There was also a big library in Pergamon at the time. Who knows? Like, there's no reason to doubt that tradition. We don't know if it's true, but at the same time, Peter, we don't have like something written by the hand of Peter. It's all secondary. Like, oh yeah, I'm a follower of Peter. Like all of a sudden at the end of the late second or early second century, you start getting things popping up saying, "Oh, I was a follower of John. Or I was a follower of Paul. I was a follower." People are claiming like they're followers. Like we don't have the primary people. We don't have anything of.
Was that a huge issue? Because we don't have anything from
It is,
Socrates either. Like Plato.
that's the thing, is that's what a lot of people will respond to that and say that's just how history is. Like Socrates wrote nothing down. He was really influential. It's all secondary. Parmenides wrote barely anything down. Most of the major thinkers of the West, we have like a fragment or nothing, and then it's like 200 years later, somebody writes a biography of that person. That's normal. That's how the history. That's how the ancient world was. It's mostly oral, you know.
For sure. David had a follow-up. He said, you made the argument that a lot of people were following lots of different saviors at the time period, and he says, who'd that for Jesus? And so I think the argument there would be the same argument you apply for all these other.
Yeah, because I don't know who followed Coney the Circle Jar. I don't know who followed Simon of Perea. All I know is that when he's getting, like, when Josephus is writing about these people decades later, he's just writing that these people had followers and they were killed. That's like all we know. And then the next question is, what's the reason to doubt that? Is there some reason why someone would just randomly make this up? You know what I mean? Like, what's the reason to doubt it? Is where I'm getting at. Not saying that it's not impossible that these are all, it could be made up. It's just that right now, I think I'm saying, like, with the data that exists right now, it looks more likely that there's someone that just was there who got killed. That's that's the minimal. That's like what I'm saying. That's it. Nothing else I know for sure. But I don't know if he actually got into a boat and was going to the land of the Gerasenes and all. I don't know any of that stuff. Who knows? That all could be made up for all we know.
Got a question from Mojo. Is the evidence for Jesus and Muhammad the same?
No, I don't think it's the same. I think they're both very small, but again, like we were just saying, this is how it is for everybody. You mentioned Socrates, which is a prime example. It's like, why should we even think he existed? He's just he could be just some literary figure people are drawing philosophy from, and like that's a possibility. It seems like because of the religious figures, people want to doubt it because they're on the opposing side of religion. You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think there's actually a epidemic of that. Atheists leave religion, and anything they associate with religion they see as terrible, and we have to eliminate it. Like morality, one of the things is like there can't be objective morality, it has to be subjective because objective morality is associated with God. Same
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
a thing. Let's see. Mass Bandit asks, John the Baptist was referenced outside of the Bible? ? Was John the Baptist referenced outside the Bible? Seems to be a similarly influential figure of the era.
Yeah, he was. And it's another figure like Jesus who didn't write nothing down, who he's written about not just in the Bible, but in other sources like Josephus, for example. And just like Jesus, you don't have Like the Jews aren't saying he didn't exist. We don't know who John the Baptist is. You don't have anyone deny. There's no hostile sources that are contesting their historicity.
Do you think there would necessarily be hostile sources in every case?
No, it's not. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. But I do think for someone like Celsus, who's writing about Jesus in the middle of the 2nd century, I do think he would at least bring it up, because he's throwing everything. He hates Christianity. He's throwing everything at it. He's completely trying to debunk it in every way. And I think I think early on, if that was floating around, if you're just making stuff up out of thin air, or if these traditions that Carrier claims did exist, they don't just disappear. People would still know about them. There'd be pockets of people talking about it, and I think it would get. And this is actually important. We have heresies recorded through Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Justin Martyr, and they're writing about all these sects of Christianity that are heretical. So they're writing about these people called Docetists, who think that when Jesus was here, he was actually just a ghost, and that he was perfect because flesh is bad. Can't be flesh. He's got to be a god, right? So he was just a ghost this whole time. And but they're still placing him in history. Like this, all the events happen still. That's the closest thing you're going to get to mythicism in these texts. Other than that, there's all these different theories about who Jesus was and what he believed in, but none of them are saying he didn't exist. They're all just saying different things about Jesus. And so if you're writing about heresies, why wouldn't you include, oh, here's the worst heresy. These people don't even think he existed. They think he was some archangel. Like, what would be the motivation to cut that out? And I hear a lot of mythicists say, well, why would they want to give that away? Like, but what's different about this heresy than the Docetist heresy? In the eyes of a Christian in the 2nd century, you're not thinking about mythicism in 400 years from now. You're refuting the stuff that's on the ground right now. You understand what I'm saying? Like they are refuting all the things about Christianity that people are saying, and they're recording all of it. We have tons of pages and books, tons of stuff on this, and there's nothing about some sort of tradition of Christianity that places Jesus as a celestial being. That doesn't. There's like dozens of different Christianities at this time, so there would be no reason to leave out. Oh, there's another tradition, and these people think that he didn't actually live here. This is all happening in the heavens. There would be no reason to leave that out. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. So but was it common or for people of the time period to actually worship individuals as divine beings in that time period, especially in the Jewish one?
Not especially in the Jewish, more in the Greco-Roman world, because you have these deos where people would obtain apotheosis and be deified. Julius Caesar and Augustus were deified. There's another Julia Domna. She was deified in the 2nd or 3rd century. I think it was in Athens. There was another Christian that got deified named Epiphanius in this early 2nd, like 110s, I think it was. He was a Christian. So this is actually an interesting point. You have a group of Christians called the Carpocratians who believe in reincarnation. They don't even these are not Old Testament. They're going through the Greek mythology lens, the Greek theology lens. They believe in transmigration of the soul, but they also believe that when a human attains apotheosis, which is the highest form of gnosis you can attain, that you exit the realm of reincarnation, you become deified, and then you're worthy of worship because people need to imitate your ways so they can be like you. They had statues of Plato, Jesus, and Pythagoras. They worship all three of them. So Jesus is just another guy who attained this apotheosis that they're going to worship. And then the leader of this sect, Harpocrates, his son Epiphanius died, and they deified him and worshipped him. So this was happening in this time period. Early Christianity was wild, dude. People don't realize early Christianity is not what it is today. Way different. Way different. People were being deified, just like Jesus.
Nerd Christian asks, Paul would be an example of somebody who thought Jesus was real, but not on earth, like a spiritual being.
I don't think so. Paul, I mean, that's what mythicists think. They're trying to make that argument that if you look at Paul, he's being so ambiguous. He's just being so vague. We just don't know. Well, I don't think so. He says that Jesus was born according to the flesh, born of a woman, born under the law. Those are all common phrases that you use for only human beings. Like we had that same language is being used in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyone that's born according to the law under the flesh needs to do this. And then Paul saying Jesus was born according to the law under the flesh. If Paul didn't think he was real, why would he say that? And I've asked this question to mythicists, and they always just say, "Well, it's just such a vague, weird thing to say." No, it's not. That you literally just admitted that you don't know this material by saying that. You just admitted without, like, you that's what you sound like right now when you say that. Everybody who actually is like immersed in this stuff knows this language is common. It's not weird or vague. So you don't get to get away with that. You don't just get to say that, you know?
Nick Jr. asks, does GI know of a written down set of criteria that establishes the historicity of some person or event? This is one I'm actually really interested in too. If historians have an actual written criterion that we can use to establish like whether someone existed or not.
I think that's, I don't know, I'm not, there could be. I'll just say I don't know. It's a good question.
Gotcha.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah,
I
if you do,
think
please.
with
please
history,
post it.
it's all based off it's like levels of possibilities. It's like levels of, is this on a 1 to 10 scale, did this happen? Like, so when someone says, like, Herodotus talks about how there's gold guarding griffins and one-eyed men in the north, in the land of the Scythians. Like, on a 1 to 10 scale, 0. Those things don't exist. But like, then he'll say something like, "Oh, in this other kingdom in the north, there's a king who he was stabbed in his right eye." Okay, what is that? First of all, that's possible, so it's at least a 1. And then you go from there. Like, you have to like put together, is it possible? What's the reason to deny it? Why would he make this up? And then when we're talking about Christianity, I think it falls back to some guy got crucified, and they made a big deal. People are pissed about it. You know.
Oh yeah, I think I totally agree with you that there's a scale of possibility in history. It's never like certain that someone existed, but I do think there should be like a list that people could use to say, here are the things that increase it on that make it go up from 1 to more than 1, and here are the things that make it go down, so that like common people like me who aren't really well educated in the historical method can really start to assess the direction the evidence is going. Because I think that's the part that's missing that I'd really like to see is there just, here are all of the things that if we see this, it increases, it moves it up into the higher realms, and these are the things that move it down, so that we can really start to evaluate the evidence as laymen. And so if there is such a criterion, I'd love to see it.
I think that's a good idea. That's a good. I wonder if there is something out there like that.
Ken Dadpool asked Bart Ehrman for me, and Bart sent like a list of a few things. There was like 3 or 4 things he put on there, but it wasn't really like a comprehensive list. So if there is, I'd definitely like to see one.
And I wonder if that's something that people should be trying to make. Like, that's a good idea. And
Yeah.
then another thing is history something that could allow for something like that? Is it, because this seems like it's not like history is not like objective like math, like 2 + 2 is 4. It's like someone said this, someone else said that, what really happened. So it would be hard to, I don't think it'd be easy to make a list like that, but it's worth trying. Definitely. I think that'd be an amazing tool to have for sure.
For sure. Say Pierre Aude asks, can you ask if he knows whether or not it's true that ancient people might have taken drugs a lot more than what seems like to be talked about by scholars?
Yeah, I do. My friend of mine who's
You take more drugs than what scholars talk about?
No, the ancient people did. Yeah, I mean, the world of Galen. Galen was the doctor of Marcus Aurelius, and he writes a lot about these drugs.
He's like the most famous, most written scholar ever, isn't he? Of a doctor
of drugs, yeah. and he relays like the ancients were not stupid. They knew what plants did. They knew which roots to cut and which venoms to use. They were doing that for centuries before Galen. He just was compiling it all. Like, so I absolutely, and I think after the church established its authority over all society for 1,000 years, I think those things went away. I think we lost that base, if that makes sense. I think that stuff comes back after the Enlightenment, where medicine comes back, but that stuff was part of the ancient world. And the ancient world was way more advanced than what we give credit for. I'm not saying that in like a Graham Hancock way, like there was fucking aliens flying around and landing on pyramids. But what I'm saying is they like the Antikythera mechanism, you can look this up, it's technically an analog computer. Like it can map out constellations and it can predict like lunar cycles and stuff. They found that off the coast of an island in Greece, and it's from the 3rd century BCE. So the Greeks and not even just the Greeks, the Chinese and the ancient Chinese were really advanced. There was a lot of people were definitely dabbling into medicine, technology. That's definitely, yeah.
David Bennett, thank you for the super chat. He asks, Jesus' story is mythologized. We agree. How does that mean his story was based on a real person, his parents, his birth? If nothing, why pretend?
Yeah. His story is based on a real person.
I think he's asking, like, we both agree that the story of Jesus was mythologized. It was embellished.
Right.
And then he's saying, why would we think more that there's more reasons to think that this is a real person? If it's mythologized, why not just go the further step and say it's a total myth?
Like I said, the historians and experts have their reasons to say it's more likely that some guy said a few things, had a few followers, and got killed. Like, that's the consensus right now. The consensus right now is that it's nothing to do with religious matters on if his death means that you're going to be saved if you believe in him. None of that shit matters. What people are saying is that most likely some guy was saying some things that was important to people. Those sayings got preserved, maybe early at first, and then put into the Gospels later, and then he got killed. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's very minimal. And my question back was, why? What's the reasons to just discount that? Like, what? Like, I get the question. It's like, okay, if this is all mythologized, then why even believe it? Okay, sure, but why not? Like, was there a reason to say? Like, is there some reason to not believe that any of it's real? You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because at the end of the day, I don't care about like, it's not about like, oh God, we have to defeat the Christians and we have to figure out a way to make sure he didn't exist. Like, no, it's like, I just want to know what the truth is. I just want to know what the facts are. I want to know what's the more likelihood. I don't care about winning against the religion or something like that. I think that's a lot. I think a lot of the motivation behind mythicism is trying to defeat Christianity instead of trying to find out what the actual truth is. You know, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think most people's motivations for investigation is usually based on their biases of trying to reinforce their biases. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that as long as you do have some kind of a consensus there to evaluate evidence impartially as much as possible, then using your personal biases as a motivation to do research is fine, as long as you can curtail that with the actual evidence and not just let your biases rule whatever you want to find. There was a question about why you're so hostile to mythicists.
Really? Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm not. I just had Mike Lawrence on my last live, and I disagree with almost everything he said. But was I hostile to him? No, I'm not. And so, and that's another thing. Is like, I get why people think there's like, when they look at the evidence and they're like, okay, he wrote nothing down, but all that stuff, I get it. But we remember this for a second. Mythicism is not the lack of belief in historical Jesus. It's the belief in a tradition about Jesus that existed before Christianity. This is a whole different thing. This is a different beast in itself.
Do all the main
I'm trying to
mythicists
get people to realize that.
do all the big mythicists believe that? Robert Price?
Every single one of them. Robert Price, no. Robert Price is an outlier. Robert Price, he's all over the place though. It's hard to pin him down on what he actually thinks. But he's more along the lines of they just made it up. He's the more conspiracy theory, which makes sense because he thinks that the election was rigged too. But he just thinks that this is all just made up by a group of Christians, which is not the same as saying Christianity comes from a branch of Judaism that's been forgotten about, that had an angel named Jesus who's made up. That's the carrier branch. That's the mainstream mythicist branch right now. And even Mike Lawrence, who I had on a couple of days ago, he thinks that Jesus was worshipped before the 30s. So he's one of those too. That's what most of them think. Yeah.
And so do you think the
it's because Price's route has already been like dragged through the mud for centuries. People thought Price is not new to this. This is like what the there's a lot of German mythicists of the 19th century, I think, English mythicists of the 20th century. You even going back to the 18th century, you had people who were just doing comparative mythology and saying Jesus is just like all these other myths. And then those are outdated now. But so Robert Price is sort of an old school mythicist in that sense, where he's going back to the outdated material that scholars are now looking at and rejecting. Where Carrier is trying to go with this new Earl Doherty approach. This guy, Earl Doherty, wrote this book about the Jesus not existing, being an angelic being. And Carrier's he wasn't an academic, but Carrier went and got his PhD and then took that and ran with it. And that's what people think now.
So do you think the Robert Price approach is more like the one you were talking about earlier? That's just like, I don't think it happened. The kind of mythicism that isn't the like extreme aliens version.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. I would say Robert Price is more along the lines of, yeah, it just didn't happen, and I just made it up. I just think it's made up, and and that's way more fringe because that's basically saying it's all a conspiracy. That's conspiracy theory right there. It's all just made up and nobody leaked it out. Nobody figured it out for all this time. It was all hidden behind closed doors. That's Robert Price for you.
So is that better or worse than Carrier's?
Worse.
Worse?
Yeah. It's worse. It's worse in certain ways, but it's better because and the only reason why you can look at it as better is because it's at least not adding things. It's not adding traditions that don't exist, that we don't have evidence for. At the very least, Robert M. Price is just looking at the evidence and not adding traditions that don't exist. He's just saying, I don't think he existed. I think it's made up. Whereas Carrier is saying, not only is it made up, but there was a tradition that everyone knows about that you don't know about, but everyone knows about it, and it existed before the time of Jesus, and there was an archangel who was the Son of God. And that's the tradition that Christianity comes from without any evidence to support. That's the difference.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we have been going for about an hour. Really, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Been super helpful. I definitely know that the route to approach the conversation with Carrier is to talk about his pre-existing Jesus tradition and what evidence there is for that. And I think that's a good starting point. Still want to find that methodology. I want the list of criteria, and that would be super helpful. But
that'd be great. I'm gonna look for it myself, actually.
Yeah, if you find it, please let me know. Email me, post a video. That'll be great. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find out more about your work?
Yeah, just look me up, Gnostic Informant on YouTube. Comes right up. So I enjoyed the conversation too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.